by the Department of Labor on House Bill 48. I'm sorry, not House Bill 48, House Bill 232. So we have two new members today, folks. Representative Staub from Manchester is now replacing Josh Adigent. And Madam Clerk, we have a fill-in today. Representative Cole
Oh, great.
is filling in. So I just want to make sure you have.
Oh, yeah, filling in for him.
I'll remember his name in a second.
For Mason.
James Mason.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Michael Cahill, would you please lead us?
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you know, we have 4 bills to go through today. House Bill 190, 232, 182, and 82. And there have been some amendments. And some of these amendments you have not had the opportunity to review very well at all. And I respect that. So at any time, Representative Sullivan and I feel that it's inappropriate to vote on something and bring it up because there's not been an appropriate time to review the amendments. We will recess if we can for a short period of time. If not, we will recess to the following Thursday to resolve anything. All right, we did the best we could with OLS. House Bill 232 FN, as you know, was retained, had a number of subcommittees, and a lot of things were done. Meetings were had with the subcommittee as well as the Department of Labor. Obviously, many of you were not here for that, and we felt it was appropriate to hear from the Department of Labor as to some of the discussions that have been had. Representative Sullivan? Say that accurately?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, we will introduce the Department of Labor. Please come to the podium, and the floor is yours on House Bill 232. Any questions anyone have, just raise your hand as usual, and I will recognize you to ask any questions of the department. All right, the floor is yours.
Went back.
My apologies. Technology is not my strong suit. I'm Danielle Albert. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Labor. I'll allow my counterpart to introduce himself.
I'm Wesley Gardner, Director of the Workers' Compensation Division for the New Hampshire Department of Labor.
So the department has reviewed the proposed language relative to the House bill, and I believe Attorney Gardner, who is former general counsel for the department, has had the most dealings with it. I'm going to let him give a bit of an overview about the amendments that are on the table, as well as some background as to the department's involvement in reviewing the matter.
Just a moment, please. Representative Sullivan?
Just to save you some time, you said amendments plural. The only amendment that has been distributed is the amendment that represents option 2.
Forgive me. I was thinking in the context of the various conversations that have
Right,
occurred.
that's fine. I just didn't want to have you go through something that no one's ever going to see.
No worries. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
So relative to what was previously termed option 2, essentially what this would do is allow the department to use rulemaking and would direct the department over, I believe, a 3-year period to promulgate rules that are at least as effective as OSHA Section 1910, which is for general construction, I believe. Again, so this would be through rulemaking that we would do this. And this was, as I understand it, kind of a compromise to the initial bill that you're all aware of from 232 that would allow stakeholders to have a say in this and forego the overall adoption of Section 1910 because there were some issues that were brought to the table. I can say at the last committee meeting, one of the major issues that came up that I think a lot of people were interested in is, unfortunately, if we were to wholesale adopt Section 1910, there'd be certain pieces that are required to meet OSHA standards. The major example that was given by Director Rojas last 2 weeks ago, apologies, not last week, was the Exeter Town Hall, which has some fire doors that, upon our review when we went there recently for a safety inspection, would not comply with Section 1910, were we just to adopt the OSHA language. So again, this bill is intended for the department to review the 1910s and do it, for lack of a better term, the New Hampshire way, with input from the legislature, input from the stakeholders, and input from other agencies, because upon our review of this, we did find out that certain state agencies and municipalities had some very genuine concerns that they'd have to replace some very expensive equipment, and might kind of bleed into what would be an unfunded mandate at the end of the day. So that's kind of the overarching bill that we're left with now. Again, I know we had initially talked several years back about a state plan, so that's not this, and I'd like to just clarify so everyone's aware. This is not a state plan. There will be no federal funds involved in this, and there will need to be some additional safety inspectors as well, because what we would anticipate doing is, while this is rolling out, while we're promulgating rules, we would anticipate a lot of the stakeholders coming to us asking, can you do a review of our facilities, make sure that we're in compliance, tell us where we might have holes so we can get ahead of this, because again, we understand that a lot of these stakeholders will have to generate funds, whether that's through taxes or other mandates. So again, we would expect essentially a consultancy program to be in place as well, where one, we would be doing outreach, but also we'd be fielding calls from the stakeholders and doing more audits than we normally do. As it is, we have 2 full-time safety inspectors and a position for a third. But again, so we would have to expand that program a little bit. And obviously happy to take any questions on any of what was just said.
Representative Sullivan.
A couple things that I think might be added for clarification. There were some concerns expressed about employers needing to add on additional expert staff to do some reviews. And I think what you just said about the consultancy program should allay some of that concern, in that the department is going to take on the role of assisting employers in making the transition to the new standards. Another thing that it's a bit in the weeds, but it's something came up in the last couple days, in that there was a concern that new things like the COVID standards could crop up over the years and be and the employers would be confronted with those things as OSHA adopts them. I think it's important to note that letter U, which is an exception, is the COVID standard. We are not adopting that. In addition, the chairman insisted that we also not adopt the placeholder alphabet pieces. I'm glad he insisted that, because essentially it takes away the concern that something COVID-like might happen 2 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, and they'll grab another one of those letters and come up with some new standards to fit the issue at the time. We would be in a position to say that's a standard we need. Let's go for it, but we wouldn't have to. We would be in the same position as we are right now with COVID. So there was some care taken to make sure that we protected employers as best we could. I would also add in that there is an authority granted in this amendment for the department to determine that certain standards in the OSHA 1910 list are not applicable to public sector employees or employers and employees in New Hampshire, and they would be able to not draft rules to reflect standards that have nothing to do with our, our workers here. So, and I guess I'd further like to point out that what we did was very intentional when we said we asked the department to create a transition plan that would be workable for the department and for employers. And and I think you did a fantastic job, and I appreciate your work. I'm a believer that if you want something done right, let the experts weigh in, and I believe that's what we've done here. And I'm pleased with the evolution of this process. 4 years ago, there was a bill that would have created the state plan. That then evolved into a study committee, which made a recommendation of adopting the 1910 standards. And that's where we were headed forward with this. We then had the retained bill because employers wanted to weigh in. They did over the month of September and October. And we used that input. I'll say the department used the input, credit where it's due. The department used that input to create this at least as effective language that allows the Department of Labor to use common sense in figuring out how best to apply this. Another example that was brought up during those hearings was the Department of Environmental Services indicated that they have some air quality testing equipment that is very expensive, as you said, also very effective. However, it's built in Europe. And because of that, it does not meet all of the OSHA certification standards. There's nothing wrong with the equipment. It simply doesn't, cross the T's and dot the I's. This allows the department to say that equipment is absolutely fine. It's going to work just fine. There are no safety issues, and we're going to approve it. So, again, where this has evolved to, I think, is a win-win for those of us who want to see tightened safety standards. It's important to point out that what adopting this amendment does is it fills in the many, many gaps that currently exist in the safety standards. Fills it in a New Hampshire friendly way, but it fills them in. And
Representative Sullivan, I kind of want to stop you for a second. I'll let you go for a while here. You're gonna have your time to. Okay, Joe, just wrap it up, and we're gonna have some more questions for these folks. But go ahead.
I've had my say.
We're here right now. We're having questions for the department. Representative McKenzie.
Thank you. You raised the issue, or at least I heard you say, the unfunded mandate. And currently this law has already been created. The safety standard law has already been created. Theoretically, and tell me if I'm wrong, there are a couple of ways we could have gone. You have the authority to promulgate rules under the department, but the process we have now, we thought was more comprehensive. It gives you more direction. So when you talk about unfunded mandates, if that were to come up again, can you explain that as to what that would mean, given that you already have the authority to do this? It's already in the law.
Well, so I think the key difference in what's already in the law and what is being proposed today is while we do have rulemaking authority, it's obviously limited to what is in 277. We can't just start expanding it. There is, I want to say, essentially like ladders, scaffolding, medical kits, maybe a handful of other pieces in there. But that's kind of what our rulemaking authority is limited to expanding that, to explaining what those standards should be. What this would do, though, is we'd be looking to the 1910s, which obviously, as we're all aware by now, is much more expansive, goes into a lot more detail there. So I think that's the key difference between what we currently have in place. So again, if we were to keep what we had in place, we wouldn't just be able to say, be directed to promulgate rules and then just start essentially doing legislative rulemaking and adding in pieces that are not part of the 277s, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the department? Representative Granger.
So would this proposal allow them to make rules for public sector employees that in any way are not described in OSHA 1910? So for instance, if the Department of Labor wanted people to wear masks, or they had to maintain social distancing, or any of the other nonsense we've seen over the past several years, would this allow them to do that?
No, in the sense that it is limited to the 1910s, and the rulemaking authority is to make sure that our standards are at least as effective as the 1910s. We could not go into anything else. Obviously, as Chairman Infantine had pointed out and Representative Sullivan, that we had carved out subpart U, which was the COVID portion. The only caveat that I would set forth there is, while I'm not aware of any COVID-related items in the other subparts, of course, there's, pieces of masks or something, but those, as my understanding, are related to the actual work being done. So it's not a COVID piece. So it'd be much more like, if you're doing some work that some dust particles might be coming off of, that the OSHA standard says wear a mask. But again, that's not, I think your question's relative to COVID and other kind of mandates like that. Again, subpart U is very specific to COVID. So there are some mandates or, laws or rules in 1910 relative to masks, but not COVID other than subpart U.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to answer a question that I think is going around here. So OSHA 1910 has 26 parts, A through Z, right? U, subpart U, had to do with COVID type things. That has been removed. X and Y are blank. A few of them are blank. So we wanted to make sure that those were removed. So if OSHA chose to add something to those, we wouldn't be automatically obligated to them. Those are empty spaces within the 26 letters of the alphabet where they could add some things. So if you wonder why we've excluded some of these things, that's why. Some of them, one was COVID related issues and one has just nothing. They're just placeholders. So that's what we understand when we start saying subpart U and what that all means. Representative Prout.
Thank you. Regarding OSHA and how they deal with how they put things under letters under 1910 and everything else, would there be anything stopping OSHA from essentially, using this as an example, but it could be broader, moving section U to be now section A subparagraph 1, or doing other reorganizations like that could have effects that are, at least from where we're sitting here today, we would view them as unexpected?
So I can't say 100% because, to be honest with you, I don't know OSHA's rulemaking on the federal level. What I can say, though, is I think it would be quite a leap for them to take a full subpart. I think your question's well-founded in the sense that they very well could add some pieces to other subparts that were adopted here. I think the key piece of this legislation really comes down to, again, we're not just wholesale adopting this and taking exactly what they're saying, because they do yearly updates, and it's something that we as the department, if this passes, will have to look into to make sure it's at least as effective. But we're not doing the wholesale adoption. It is going through rulemaking with public notice, public hearings, so everyone can have input, to include the legislature, to include the stakeholders. So again, to your question, I cannot imagine that they would be able to take an entire subpart and put it into another subpart that would be encompassed here. That being said, though, yes, I believe that they could make more robust standards to, add pieces to that. Given that the COVID standards are in subpart U, I think it would be a little odd if they started putting those into other places, because these subparts are very specific to types of equipment, types of work. So it just wouldn't seem relevant to me that they would do that. But again, caveat being, I don't know exactly how they do it on the federal level as far as relates to rulemaking.
Follow up?
I guess how would it work if a subpart that we did incorporate referenced a subpart we didn't? Say, for example, they went through every letter that they have there and say, this is how section U applies to when this work is being done. And, it may look like it's in conflict with section U, and this is how you resolve that conflict, and just all those massive interrelationships. How would that get resolved?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I do think that this was kind of addressed through section 4 of the proposed language, which does state that the commissioner shall have authority to determine if standards are inapplicable to employers and unnecessary to implement. So again, the department has a level of discretion here to determine if there are pieces of the subparts that are just that don't work for New Hampshire. They're not applicable and they're unnecessary. So I think in that case, it's a piece that we would be able to look at and say that this is really not necessary because we specifically, in this example of COVID, we specifically exempted subpart U. So we would see if there are pieces of it that through the incorporated reference might have relevance to what we're actually looking for. But again, we would look at the end of the day to the fact that subpart U was specifically exempted. So for that reason, I think that's how this bill actually ensures that that's not going to be an issue in the future.
Thank you.
Of course.
Representative Seaworth and Representative Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like you to clarify something I think I heard you said earlier, and kind of to paraphrase, you said that your existing rulemaking authority is limited to the rules that have already been promulgated. And I'd like you to explain that further. The authorization for those rules, to me, seem somewhat broad in that 27711, which is what you make the rules according to, says anything that's dangerous to safety or health of employees. So it would seem to me that if you discover a new danger that isn't in the existing rules, you do have existing authority. Could you close that?
So yeah, that's a fair question, and I think that's something that's been kind of a point of contention throughout this as well too. Is do we have the authority to do that? And I think what we have found is, yes, to your point, we could do a little bit, but we really need a basis for this, and I think it's really difficult for us to say through rulemaking that, as you said, we notice something that's dangerous. But yet the legislature did not see fit to put any of that, even an inkling of that, say it's fire doors or something like that. We have nothing concerning fire doors whatsoever in the 277s. So again, I think we kind of run into the potential issue of legislating through rule and the pushback with that. So yes, so thank you for the question. And to clarify, that's kind of more where I was going with it. I do think that there is a potential that we could do some rulemaking. I think that was an option that was kind of discussed at the last committee meeting, but I would say we'd be incredibly limited, and we would also expect to receive a fair bit of pushback that, we're legislating at the end of the day. So I think that was kind of the concern, and that's why, we have the intro paragraph that looks to the 1910s for guidance, because that was another piece that came up routinely is, what are we looking at for guidance here if it's not our own rules or our own laws? And again, if we're looking at something else using a basis of, say, it's OSHA, another state that they're doing this, I think that kind of tends to bleed into legislating through rulemaking. So that was the concern there.
Thank you.
Representative Granger, followed by Representative Cahill.
So we were discussing the issues of sort of aiming at the rules of 1910, and that leads to certain problems that I and him might have brought up. Would it not make sense just to peg it to a specific year and just say the OSHA 1910 rules of the year 2023 in the actual legislation, and then in the future, as they get updated, if they get updated in a way that's significant or important, then the legislature can adopt that in the future.
I could see that being as a fair compromise. I don't see a reason we couldn't do that. And I think it's a point well taken that if we have a piece that's static in time, then we all kind of generally know exactly what is coming in the next 3 years as we promulgate rules.
Thank you.
Representative Cahill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I understand this correctly, the private sector is regulated by OSHA, and we're just changing it to extend it to the public sector workers, correct?
Yes, in the sense that we're not really extending all of OSHA. 1910 is only one of the parts.
Follow up?
Well,
Good. All right, so then, and we're doing the New Hampshire 603 version so that you will be aiming at making them as effective, but not a copy of the 1910 regulations.
Yes, that's correct. Because one of the overarching concerns I think we heard and is well founded is that the 1910s I believe is 1,100 pages when you print it out, and there's a lot of minutia in there, and it can be overbearing for not just for the stakeholders, but I think it would be overbearing for us to implement to a point because we have to have our safety inspectors trained on this. It takes time. So again, the intent being that it's at least as effective. And we're looking at those standards without having to go into, it can be a couple of paragraphs rather than 20 pages on scaffolding. And we say this is at least as effective as the OSHA regulations and gets us as safe as the OSHA regulations. And again, is much more digestible for the stakeholders and the public.
One more.
no, follow up. That's fine.
Thank you very much. All right, so one of the things that brought us here was the fact of a public sector worker being injured and not having it investigated after the fact. Is that something that would be addressed if we do this?
So this would just be the standards at the end of the day. I will say the other piece of that, as I testified to earlier, is the intent would also be for us to have a more robust safety program in the sense that we would have consultancies, we would have a safety manager, we would have other safety officers. So in that sense, we would have more bandwidth to go out and do these checks, to do audits, to make sure that places are safe, and more investigations at the end of the day.
Thanks very much.
Representative McKenzie, then Representative Sullivan.
Yeah, I have kind of a
Microphone.
two-part question. So
Microphone a little closer.
I have kind of a two-part question. The first one relates to the progression of the law, which moved the number from 5 to 15. So when you move that number up in terms of who is required to file, who is required to have safety and health programs in their facilities, do you have any sense of how many people that carved out?
You're saying for the Joint Loss Management Committee
Yeah.
and the safety programs? I do not, and I wouldn't want to try and fashion a guess, honestly. So I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm sure as we're all aware, though, a lot of businesses in New Hampshire are small businesses, and more than likely below 15, and probably a good chunk that are in that 5 to 15 range. But again, I do not have that data, unfortunately.
And then the second part, if I
Yes.
could.
Yep.
So I would like you to speak to the question of discretion. And there is currently, as what I can see, just gives a commissioner a lot of authority, gives you a lot of authority to determine, what goes in and what doesn't go in. I mean, we can certainly petition to change the rules. We can do that, but speak to the discretion and how those decisions you think will be made as to what gets in and what doesn't.
So you're saying discretion as it relates to the rulemaking piece of the bill?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, so again, the at least as effective is something we actually did pull from OSHA language, because state plans, by and large, they do have a carbon copy of the OSHA regulations because it's frankly simpler. The other option that you can go with is at least as effective, meaning what it says, it's at least as effective. The problem that a lot of the states haven't gone with that, as I understand it, is it requires a back and forth with OSHA to determine on OSHA's basis if it's at least as effective. So again, that's something we pulled from there. And to your question, there is a decent amount of discretion there, I would say, of what piece we would keep out, what we would keep in. If it relates to measurements, what is that? I think what we would be doing is, through the public hearing process, making sure the stakeholders are involved so we know, boots on the ground. Beyond that, we would have our safety inspectors before we're doing this rulemaking, and while we're doing the rulemaking, we would have them actually in the field seeing how does this affect people, what's safe. We would be all doing some research. So we would just, by and large, we would be informed by, one, what the OSHA standards are themselves, two, reports through OSHA, three, our own safety inspections, four, the stakeholders, and five, honestly, I think the legislature as well too, because I think there's a vested interest in a lot of members of this committee, and I think a piece of this bill was so everyone, including members of this committee, could have a say when we do come up with rulemaking to say, I've done my own research and I think that we need this piece of it. So to that point, again, it is broad. You're correct in that sense. But we would be using all of those tools, all of those resources to inform our decision, I believe, and much like anything else, the longer we go through that process, I would say the better it gets for everybody because we all have an understanding of it.
Great, terrific answer. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Representative Sullivan.
As a follow-up to Representative Cahill's question about investigations, isn't it true that a few years ago we did pass a bill that tightened up the need for reporting and investigations in the cases of serious injuries and deaths on the job?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands. Going once, going twice. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I would ask you if you wouldn't mind hanging around
Of
for a
course.
little bit,
No
just in
problem.
case there's some things that come up. All right. I'm going to move into our schedule and open the hearing on House Bill 170 FN relative to duration of unemployment benefits. Representative Seaworth, Avalani.
Yeah, 190.
190 FN.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ITL.
Motion on the floor is ITL. Do I hear a second? Second by Representative Seaworth. Representative Avalani, you're recognized to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is a little bit unworkable at this moment in time, and I think another year to look at it is in order. Thank you.
All right, there's been a motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, a motion on the floor is inexpedient to legislate. I want to make sure the clerk is ready here, and then she will call the roll, understanding that Representative Cole
Mace.
and Representative
She's on there.
Stop. Okay, all right, good.
Yeah.
You're already on there, Representative. All right, cool. All right, no other discussion. Representative, the motion on the floor is Madam Clerk, the motion on the floor is ITL. Please call the roll.
Vice Chair Seaworth,
Yes.
Rep. Avalani,
Yes.
Rep. Prout,
Yes.
Rep. Love,
Yes.
Rep. Boyd,
Yes.
Rep. Cole,
Yes.
Rep. Colcom,
Yes.
Rep. Drago,
Yes.
Rep. Granger,
No.
Ranking Dem Sullivan,
Yes.
Rep. Baruti, Rep. Cahill,
Yes.
Rep. Di Silvestro, Rep. Susi, Rep. Bouchard,
Yes.
Rep. McKenzie.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Rep. Leclerc,
Yes.
Rep. Staub,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That is 19-1.
Any objection to consent agenda?
I object.
All right, if you have an objection, goes on the regular calendar. I'm going to skip. Representative Seaworth?
Can I have a word on the next one?
Oh, no.
Okay, two things I want to.
Sorry. Yep.
Representative, since you are, you must provide a minority report.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Trying to skip around for ease here, folks. House Bill 182 FN, prohibiting discharge of volunteer firefighters or volunteer emergency medical technicians from other employment. I am turning this over since the amendment is mine. Mr. Vice Chairman, would you please chair this bill? Because I really don't think it's appropriate for me to be the chair and present my own amendment.
Very well. So I'll look to you for a motion then.
Define my motion. I move ought to pass on amendment amendment 2023-2404H.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will you speak to your amendment, please?
Thank you. As all of us recall, we had a bill in front of us to allow volunteer firefighters to not be reprimanded or fired for being late to their job because they were attending to an emergency. And we got mired in all kinds of different things about when they could leave work, when they could not leave work, when they were allowed, when they were not. Then we had when we had some of the retained sessions, Representative Wolf, who was the sponsor of the bill, said, I want the same rights that the ambulance drivers currently have, which really states if you are on the way to your place of work and you either witness or come across an emergency, you must render assistance and do what you need to do, and you cannot be reprimanded or fired for doing so. And I've done the same thing here for firefighters. And if you look online, if I can find what line. I can't find what line. It is line 10 and 11. They witness or come upon while en route to a place of employment. That is what has been added. And I removed the part that on the original bill, which kind of gave a definition, which really removed the ability, the whole thing about leaving your office, leaving your place of business. That seemed to be the desire of the sponsor, and that is what I have done. And again, Representative Sullivan, since this was presented to everyone just now, if it is your desire to postpone this to another date, that would be acceptable. I will leave it up to you and your group.
I would say for the time being, let's keep going and see where we land. The possibility we may want to take a short caucus, but let's, I guess, can I launch into a question, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. As I recollect during our discussion of the retained bill, we were looking at some existing, an existing statute that dealt with the emergency medical technicians. And is what we're looking at right now that that language with the firefighters added in?
Would you ask the question one more time?
Sure. I remember finding a statute during our discussion earlier of the retained bill. In that statute, provided pretty much exactly what Representative Wolf was looking for, as I recollect, emergency medical technicians. And the thought was just add the firefighters in and we're there. Is that indeed what has been done?
Yes and no. You're talking about section RSA 153A. And I'm trying to find the exact subsection where we took this from to try to copy it. So it was not going to be possible to add this to 153 because this 153 is emergency medical and trauma services. Okay, it really didn't fit, but I would like to at least show you exactly what the wording is so you can review it. And everyone has 153A out in front of them?
No.
In theory.
All right, Brian, where is it here? I had it dog-eared here to find it. Well, you guys are gonna have to bear with me while I find 153.
While you're looking, frankly, my concern was that we would put it in the wrong part of the law. The fact that it's been moved is a good thing.
No, but I want to find the exact sentence so we can have, let me start from the beginning. I'd rather it be the exact thing, Mr. Representative Sullivan, so,
153A17. Two.
It's a liability. It's different.
Representative Sullivan?
Yes.
If I might read,
Please do.
I'm reading 153A17, Roman numeral 2.
Okay.
And I know you're looking at it there, so for everyone else's. No licensed emergency medical care provider who in good faith attempts to render emergency medical services authorized by this chapter at any emergency scene while en route to a place of employment shall receive any form of reprimand or penalty by an employer as a result of late arrival in the place of employment.
Thank you. Further questions?
I didn't see that, Representative Sullivan.
Yeah, if I could just follow up.
Yep.
Again, I think it's appropriate that that language be moved into the right part of the statute. I guess my question is, do the emergency medical technicians, are they now cited in two different places in our statutes? 275 and 155? 153.
I believe they're two different things. 153A has to do with, I believe it's mostly ambulance and EMTs, whereas 275A,
It's volunteers.
I believe, has volunteer fire department and emergency medical
Okay,
technicians.
so it's dealing
Could
with
there-
volunteers.
Could there be a lapse? Excuse me, could there be a overlapping? Yes, which is why I tried to make the language exactly the same. Because
Thank
you
you.
can't put the volunteer firefighters into the EMTs, and you can't put the EMTs into the volunteer firefighters.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Representative Sullivan, are you okay with taking a vote on this amendment at this time?
I think we'd like to take a quick caucus, just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay. 10 minutes? You long?
Not more than.
All right, we'll suspend for 5 minutes to allow, recess for 5 minutes to allow caucus.
All right, so yours isn't gonna work.
I don't think so. My apologies. Having reconvened the hearing, are there any further questions or points of discussion? Representative Sullivan.
Um, Having left things somewhat up in the air when we left, I just want to update as we come back that our caucus is prepared to go forward with a vote on this.
All right, thank you. Before we do, anything from other members? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
This is a vote on 2023-2404H, the amendment to Bill 182. Vice Chair Seaworth,
Yes.
Rep. Avalani,
Yes.
Rep. Prout,
Yes.
Rep. Love,
Yes.
Rep. Boyd,
Yes.
Rep. Cole,
Yes.
Rep. Colcom,
Yes.
Rep. Drago,
Yes.
Rep. Granger,
Yes.
Ranking Dem Sullivan,
Yes.
Rep. Baruti,
Yes.
Rep. Cahill,
Yes.
Rep. Di Silvestro,
Yes.
Rep. Susi,
Yes.
Rep. Bouchard,
Yes.
Rep. McKenzie.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Rep. Leclerc,
Yes.
Rep. Staub,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That is 20-0.
Any objection to placing this on the consent calendar?
We need to vote on the bill.
We only amended. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Any further discussion before we vote on the bill as amended? Please call the roll on the vote of OTPA. Oh, we need the motion. I'm sorry. See, this is why they pay you the big bucks, isn't it? Is there a motion? Representative Avalani, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move OTPA on House Bill 182.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Now any discussion? And seeing none, can we take the vote?
Vote OTPA, Vice Chair Seaworth,
Yes.
Rep. Avalani. Rep. Prout,
Yes.
Rep. Love,
Yes.
Rep. Boyd,
Yes.
Rep. Cole,
Yes.
Rep. Colcom,
Yes.
Rep. Drago,
Yes.
Rep. Granger,
No.
Ranking Dem Sullivan,
Yes.
Rep. Baruti,
Yes.
Rep. Cahill,
Yes.
Rep. Di Silvestro, Rep. Susi, Rep. Bouchard, Rep. McKenzie.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Rep. Leclerc,
Yes.
Rep. Staub,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That is 19-0. I mean 1.
Is there an objection to placing the bill on consent?
No.
So we'll place the bill on consent, and I will turn the gavel back over to your capable hands.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. The next bill, House Bill 232 FN, adopting Section 1910 of the OSHA standards. Prior to any discussion, Representative Sullivan and I have been made aware of something, and we'd like to address it with the department. If you wouldn't mind, please coming up to the podium again, Representative Sullivan. 232 FN.
You recognizing me?
Yes, I have.
Okay. It was pointed out to us that we still have a 60-day implementation period for this bill. And the concern was that on line 6 of the amendment, it indicates that employers shall provide employees at least the level of protection provided under the Federal Occupation Safety and Health Administration standards found in 29 CFR Part 1910. If that language is in there, would the department have to start enforcing standards that are at least effective within 60 days? My sense was that the department would start writing rules anytime after 60 days and within 3 years. But do you it seems to me there might be a problem with that language. Does it seem to be a problem to you as well?
So yes, Representative, I think I would agree that there could be an interpretive problem in how it was written, and that's a good call on that. I think the intent, as you stated, really was for us to begin drafting rules and to put stakeholders on notice that, they will be required to provide what's at least as effective. But yes, as it's technically written, I think it would be correct to state that the employers, 60 days upon passage, would be required to provide that level of safety. I would state, though, that, as we kind of discussed throughout the multiple years of committees that we've dealt with this, the department would be working with those employers. It wouldn't be punitive. Of course, that's not within the actual statute at that point. So I would say it's a well-founded concern. But the intent we would always have and have had since we've been discussing this is to go in, do the best we can in the interim before the rules are drafted, to do these pencil audits and determine where these public employers are at relative to the 1910s and where we think they might need to be.
Mr. Speaker? Speaker.
Really?
We did need one for a
Mr. Chairman works.
Thank you. Having come this far with this, it might be a good idea to get it right rather than close to right. So I would propose, Mr. Chairman, that we do get a further adjustment of this amendment that would that would indicate that rulemaking could begin 60 days after passage, but there would be a 3-year period to complete that process, and that we just make it clear that until the rules are written, you're not enforcing the rule. So what do you say, Mr. Chairman?
I say you have until Tuesday, next Thursday at 2 p.m., where we will reconvene this committee to deal with any business that we did not finish today, including this. Representative Cahill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered if, because this is now just recently identified and something that could be very straightforward in remedying, could this be done with a floor amendment rather than having us reconvene on Thursday?
Technically, it could. I don't want it to bring fodder for a lot of things. I will tell you, I'll be honest with you, I think because we're meeting here today, people are starting to look at these things. And there might be another sentence or two that, who knows, might come to our attention. We have the time. We're doing this early enough before our deadline. Whether we all agree on the final thing or not, it's not because a lot of people didn't spend a lot of time to try to get it right.
See you next Thursday.
All right. Representative Sullivan, Seaworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out to the members of the committee, if you didn't notice, I set another amendment to this bill in front of you. I won't discuss it at length, but it's essentially the option 3 that I understand that was discussed before the committee, Mr. Chairman. So that's something that hopefully you'll have some more time to be able to review it before we discuss it again. Thank you.
So I am closing the hearing on House Bill 232, recessing the hearing on 232 FN I will say right now, I'm not going to give a date certain because I got to make sure the room's available and everything else, but it is my druthers that the date certain will be next Thursday at 2 p.m. here.
Mr. Chairman, it occurs to me that it is Thursday at 3 o'clock and the calendar is already closed.
Okay, let's pull out the calendars. And look at, The 17th, well, let's look at the calendar. We're taking the time to do this, so let's just look at it. Today is the 2nd. We have till Friday, the 17th. We can meet next week. We can meet the following week on the 16th. It is, and that will make the calendar if that makes.
I think it has to be in the calendar.
Representative Avalani pointed out that if we continue this executive session to a date certain.
You should put your
then-
microphone on.
Thank you. If we can continue this executive session to a date certain, then it has already been noticed in that way. But I'm not sure about all the details necessary to do that.
I'm going to, I want to get this right, guys. Does anyone mind if if everyone stays in their seats and I recess a minute? I'd like to talk to the clerk.
Yes, please.
Representative Sullivan, members of the committee, I've spoken to the clerk, and we would have to, it would have to be scheduled in the calendar. However, the calendar is not done. And if you give me 5 or 10 minutes, I can ask Jamie to do this, and we should be all set for next Thursday, if that's acceptable. All right, so everyone can check their. All right, it is being submitted to the clerk, so we should be all set. I'm not going to do anything with it now. Let's move. Our last bill, and again, there's an amendment here, and I apologize for the late presentation of it. House Bill 82, FN, relative to employment protection for participation in therapeutic cannabis program.
I'd like to make a motion.
Representative Granger,
I'd like to move ITL.
motion on the floor is ITL. Is there a second? Second by Representative Drago. You may speak to your motion.
It seems to me that employees and employers should have the same set of rights. I enjoy the ability to, so I have European coworkers that don't have this, But I can quit my job whenever I want. I can just stop showing up. It doesn't matter what my reason is. It doesn't matter why. I could be because I found a better opportunity. It could be a horrible reason. It could be simply I don't like my boss's sweater. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It doesn't need to be just. It doesn't need to be fair because I can make my own decisions. And if I make a bad decision, if I leave a job that was a good job for a dumb reason, I suffer the consequences. I no longer have that job. I no longer have that income source. Rights aren't this sort of thing that apply to some people but not others, and that you can exercise them when it's convenient and not when it's not convenient. If an employer or a company wants to fire someone for any reason, no matter what, they should have the same rights as the employee does. And if they lose a valuable employee just because they had a medical cannabis card, then that's their loss. And yeah, it's the employee's loss too, but if I quit my job, that's the employer's loss. You can't be forcing people to comply to our idea of what is right and what is wrong. We have to let people have rights and let them keep their rights. And that implies whether you like the employer, whether you dislike the employer, you got to let people do what they do. And they're never going to do everything you want them to do. They're always going to do what they want to do. You got to have to live with that.
Representative Seaworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whatever parts of that argument I agree with, I'd like to ask the committee to please vote against this motion. I think what we heard when this bill was presented, at least what made the biggest impact on me, is that the New Hampshire Supreme Court has made a ruling on this issue, and I believe that if we can get to my amendment, it will address exactly what was in that ruling. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, there's a motion on the floor of an expedient to legislate. It's been moved, seconded, and there's been discussion. If you are in favor, you'll voting yes. If you are against, you'll be voting nay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
An ITL for Bill 82. Vice Chair Seaworth,
No.
Rep. Avalani. No. Rep. Prout,
No.
Rep. Love,
No.
Rep. Boyd,
No.
Rep. Cole,
No.
Rep. Colcom,
No.
Rep. Drago,
Yes.
Rep. Granger,
Yes.
Ranking Dem Sullivan,
No.
Rep. Baruti,
No.
Rep. Cahill,
No.
Rep. Di Silvestro, Rep. Susi, Rep. Bouchard,
No.
Rep. McKenzie.
No.
The clerk votes no. Rep. Leclerc,
No.
Rep. Staub,
No.
Mr. Chair.
No.
So that's 2 to 18. The motion fails.
Okay, prior to making, asking for the next motion, Representative Sullivan and I have always agreed that if we have competing amendments, we will make our case for each one. If each one does not pass because it's a 10-10, so be it, and then we'll deal with it as we do on the House floor and everything else. So I just want everyone to understand what is most likely going to happen, okay? Before I even call for motions. Representative Sullivan, you have a question?
So I just want to understand what the competing amendments are. It is the amendment by Rep. Colcom and the amendment by Rep. Seaworth is what we're talking about?
The amendment from Representative Seaworth is amendment number 2023-2405H. And I am not exactly sure which amendment you're going to present, whether it is the adigent amendment or the sponsor's amendment.
I would point out the adigent amendment has already passed. So that is what we are sitting on right now, OTP as amended. That amendment was passed, it's 0785. It was passed on a 15-5 vote.
Okay.
I believe,
I'm trying to,
we have trouble remembering things sometimes.
Mr. Chair, could we repeat that amendment number, please?
Is Amendment 0785. H.
yeah, I gotta pull it here.
Then we retained it.
It was a long time.
I vaguely remember it.
0785H.
Representative Avalani.
Thank you. That was presented by Representative Bale.
Okay.
Oh, right, yes,
Correct.
and that I do remember.
Correct. Yes, but you said it was the Addison Amendment. And that's what confused me. It is the,
That is not the same number.
make sure we're getting all the right
Please-
piece of
please
paper
hold.
here. Oh, folks, you guys are all set. I'm sorry. We're done with the OSHA bill. Thank you very much for coming. I apologize. I'm sorry. Okay, does everyone have all their binders? They're pulling all this out?
Yes.
Wherever it is.
So,
It's a different number.
I don't know if somebody,
Yeah, I don't even have a folder up there. I don't know where mine is.
I might have a folder now, but the last time we had a meeting, my folder was empty. I don't know where all the papers went. No idea.
I don't know where my folder is. I have my own papers in my van, briefcase in my van, that's at the mechanics.
Every time we go, it's like, and then last time they all gone.
work on further amendment.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we did. Just for folks, it's been a long time since we did this. If you recall what occurred, Representative, go ahead, Representative Seaworth, you just outlined it better than I'm going to right now. And then Representative Sullivan, you can opine.
All right, so when this bill was brought to us in the public hearing, the sponsor had already drafted an amendment to the original language, said that I have problems with my language as drafted, here's a substitute. When we first met in executive session, we agreed by a margin to adopt that proposed amendment. And then we began, I don't remember, I think we didn't have anything else. We then started talking about OTP and we couldn't agree that that language was the final product. So we ended up not voting on OTP. Some other amendments were brought forth and then we voted to retain the bill to work on the language of those amendments. So we were left with what's labeled as the Vail Amendment as having been replacing the original language. And that's how it has stayed.
And I would only add that the correct number on the Vail Amendment is 0549H.
I think we should, since most people are not remembering. Representative Avalani?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was two that were brought forward. One was on February 15th, which was 0549 by Representative Vale, and also 0785, which was brought forward on March 7th. March 7th is the one that we took the vote on.
Right.
The 549 did not come because it did not have the exemptions in Section 3 for the public and emergency officials.
Thank you. That's the number I've got on my notes. So I agree that that's the one we passed. I simply don't have that amendment.
Well,
We're getting
the
copies of
clerk
it?
here was quick enough to go get the file and is going to have copies made.
Copies are being made of 0785H, which is listed as I think the adjutant amendment.
Is it that, or is it the bail amendment?
I think he made the motion.
Oh, that might be right.
Yeah, this one.
He did second it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll have it on the amendment. He's gonna bring all of his copies. And then we pause the bill.
Good thing you started this off this way.
It's weird, it doesn't say, oh, God's passed the amendment, then that passed. That we voted, it was 10 to 10, then, okay, let's go over this. So
Just for the sake of clarity, each one of these amendments is replacing section 1. So the last amendment that we pass that replaces section 1 is the amendment we adopt.
I'm gonna have the clerk kind of go through it with everyone as to what we did, and then we'll have the amendment, and so you'll see it if you have the original bill with you. So, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the order of business from March 15th, 2023, I'm sure we've all memorized this, huh? The first motion was moved by Rep. Sullivan, seconded by Rep. Adjutant for Amendment 2023-0785H. And our vote on the amendment was 15-5. Then Rep. Sullivan moved ought to pass with amendment, seconded by Rep. Susi. The vote was 10-10. And then a motion was made by Rep. Susi to retain this bill, HB 82. That was seconded by Rep. Sullivan with a vote of 16-4. And that's what we arrive here today to complete. Hey, look, it's matter. That made me feel useful.
Okay, I thought it was one.
And folks can look at this if they want to.
No, I have all this. I just want to get everyone to get a copy of the amendment so we can refresh everyone's memory and move forward. Now, just the amendment that we passed, in my recollection, the change was to exclude emergency personnel, fire and police,
Correct.
public safety, the section 3. This is 0785 is the one that we passed. I'm sorry. Okay.
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Copying it.
Is everyone kind of, sorry for the new people, Representative Staub and Cole. We'll get those amendments to you.
You probably still have your copy, but maybe.
This is the Vail amendment.
Yes,
Wrong one.
this is the one we passed.
No, it's not.
That's in the
Oh, wait,
official record.
it says it. Oh,
0785.
I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, yep.
So hopefully if you have your original bill in front of you and then the Vail Amendment 0785H. That is where the bill, this is where the legislation stands now. Because this amendment was passed by this committee prior to it being retained. No. I'm being told no.
That changes
Okay, the first time this has happened to me in 20 years, 18 years. So, Representative Sullivan, did you hear what, all right. We explained that a motion, the bill was passed with amendment 0785H. However, as soon as the bill was retained, that wiped out any amendments. They can still be presented. So we are now looking at the original bill. Doesn't mean that it can't be presented again. All right, so we're back to the bill as is. I didn't know that. I'm new one on me. Is everyone all set with what we're doing?
Well,
Okay. Well, let's put it this way, Representative Sullivan, we will be submitting one amendment. Would you like to look through your amendments and determine if, how many, if all, if, or which one, so we can make sure everyone has that? Okay.
okay.
All right. I think you might. All right. So what we have a potential is there are 3 amendments that were presented to the committee prior to the bill being retained. We have one being presented today. Representative Sullivan has allowed me to make a motion to, or to hear a motion for the amendment, which Representative Seaworth will be provided. And at that point, after hearing it, they'll make the decision whether or not there'll be any additional amendments on their side. So being the way it is, I will accept a motion. Representative Seaworth, you are recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move Amendment 2023-2405H.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded by Representative Babalani. You are recognized to speak to your motion.
Thank you very much. And once again, I want to apologize for the late arrival. I just got the language last night. But I put this amendment together. It goes back to a concern that I had when the bill was first presented in this committee. And it was discussed that the language came from a New Jersey law. And it sort of bothered me that these things tie into other laws within labor, maybe other laws outside of labor, and I don't know New Jersey law, and I wondered if there was some kind of connection that I didn't understand. So in putting together this amendment, I wanted to tie it very specifically to New Hampshire law and very specifically to the New Hampshire Supreme Court case that actually has created what we understood from the public testimony, the status quo of the law on this issue. So much of this is taken directly from the Supreme Court's opinion. The Supreme Court said that at issue in the case before them was the disability of the employee who had been dismissed, and that the marijuana card and the status as a marijuana user was not the key point in why he shouldn't have been dismissed. It was the fact that he had a disability which is protected under RSA 354-A2 as referenced in this law. And so therefore, if you review the language that I have, it ties it to that connection. And then also makes clear that the person who has a therapeutic cannabis card is presumed to have the disability as protected under our existing statute. It also covers the issue that we had talked about before, where this is not meant to authorize a person using cannabis and being impaired by cannabis on the job there is a presumption that that is an undue hardship, again, referring to the language in 354A2.
Thank you. I'm going to take the liberty of making a comment here, and then I would like to recognize Representative Prout. One of the issues that I had with the initial bill was that I felt it went beyond current employees to future potential applicants and employees. And Representative Sullivan and I agreed to disagree on that matter. He wanted it in there, and I did not want it in there. But thanks to Representative Prout and I and Representative Colcom going through all of the equal opportunity section 354A7 and everything else, that is already in current law, that you cannot discriminate against future employees. So that's no longer a concern of mine. Representative Prout, you want to expand on this?
Thank you. I think the Seaworth Amendment really dovetails nicely into our existing statutes, and it creates the presumption is if you have a card, you have a qualifying disability, and then the entire body of law around disabilities and how to handle them and how to balance the rights of the employee versus the needs of the employer is just incorporated, and that's been well litigated. And I think the big benefit we get from incorporating all of that history is that there's a lot of certainty about how things are supposed to work. And with that certainty brings less cases going to court, brings everybody being certain of what they can, where they stand, what they're supposed to do, what they can ask an employer, what they can't ask an employer. And basically, to cut it all short, reduces lawyer fees. Is less of these cases will have to go to the lawyers, to the Department of Labor, to the courts, and that it'll essentially be both faster and cheaper to get a resolution for all involved when these cases come forward. And that's really one of the benefits I see of dovetailing it into the existing New Hampshire law and everything that goes with that.
Thank you. Part of the equal opportunity statute 354A7 uses the word qualified medical condition. And under the equal opportunity, employment opportunity, you cannot deny the ability of someone to have or to make what's the word I'm looking for? Reasonable accommodations, thank you, for someone with a qualified medical condition, whether they're a current employee or a potential applicant. Representative Sullivan, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, the seeing how language is just coming before us right now, I feel compelled to have I just feel compelled to have a quick caucus to discuss it as a group, so that hopefully we can move forward today with something.
Yes, and if you can't, let me know as soon as possible so I can get one more thing in for Thursday. All right, we're back. I will outline that a member of the public who's involved with the cannabis program, who's been before us a number of times, does not know whether this is an issue, but line 3, the technical term under 126X is qualifying patient, not qualified patient. We will look into that, and if we do have to make an amendment on the floor or something simple, is that acceptable? All right, so we're back from,
Unfortunately, I got it out of the old
yep,
bill, not.
okay, I see where you got it, yeah. Well, we'll check with, see how this goes first, and we can always check. Representative Sullivan, you're recognized to speak.
I'm going to vote in favor of this amendment and in favor of ought to pass as amended. And I guess I just appreciate the hard work and study that some of my colleagues here have put into this, and I think it accomplishes. And I heard one of the comments that this is going to save a lot of legal fees. That is true, and there's no sense in dragging more people through the court system in order to get what they ought to be entitled to. So I just want to say thank you for the amendment. It does what I believe is needed.
Thank you. I also appreciate all the people that dug into this. So thank you very much. Are there any other comments from any other members of the committee prior to taking a vote? We have a motion. We have a motion for an amendment. It's been seconded and there's been discussion. If you're in favor, you'll vote yes. Opposed, vote no. Madam Clerk, yes.
This is a vote on amendment 2023-2405H. Vice Chair Seaworth,
Yes.
Rep. Avalani,
Yes.
Rep. Prout,
Yes.
Rep. Love,
Yes.
Rep. Boyd,
Yes.
Rep. Cole,
Yes.
Rep. Holcomb,
Yes.
Rep. Drago,
Yes.
Rep. Granger,
Yes.
Rep. Ranking Dem Sullivan,
Yes.
Rep. Baruti, Rep. Cahill, Rep. Di Silvestro,
Yes.
Rep. Susi, Rep. Bouchard, Rep. McKenzie.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Rep. Leclerc,
Yes.
Rep. Staub,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
The amendment is passed. It's open for further amendment. Representative Seaworth.
I would like to move ought to pass as with the amendment. that you
All
just
righty,
passed.
that's an appropriate motion as well. Is that seconded by Representative Avalani? It is open for discussion. Seeing none, the motion on the motion on the floor is ought to pass with amendment. They vote, yeah. The yes if you're, I'm sorry, Representative Seaworth, ought to pass with amendment. It's all right. I understand it passed. Seconded by Representative Avalani. If you're in favor, you will vote yes. Against, vote no. Madam Clerk?
Vice Chair Seaworth,
Yes.
Rep. Avalani,
Yes.
Rep. Prout,
Yes.
Rep. Love,
Yes.
Rep. Boyd,
Yes.
Rep. Cole,
Yes.
Rep. Holcomb,
Yes.
Rep. Drago,
No.
Rep. Granger,
Nope.
Ranking Dem Sullivan,
Yes.
Rep. Baruti, Rep. Cahill, Rep. Di Silvestro, Rep. Susi, Rep. Bouchard, Rep. McKenzie.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Rep. Leclerc,
Yes.
Rep. Staub,
Yes.
and Mr. Chair,
Yes.
18-2.
Any objection to consent agenda? If you do, you just have to write the minority blurb. Should I do the Jeopardy song? You're all set? All right, no objection, consent. All right, there's no further bills in front of us. I will let you know that I'm expecting about 12 to 14 pieces of legislation coming to us. Have not been able to read all the things. They're just titles, so I just made a guess. And that our goal is to meet I believe it's the 18th and 25th of January, to discuss, as many bills as possible. I'd like to have all of our bills heard within three days, 3 Thursdays, so then we can dig into what we have. And again, I don't know all of it. Representative McKenzie has a few that he shared with me. I haven't really seen the wording yet, but we'll wait and see. Some of them will be quick, some of them will require subcommittees. Representative Sullivan, do you have any comments, or any announcements?
No announcements, but a comment. It seems that when we sit in partisan grouping, we do our most bipartisan work. So I don't get it, but it is.
Well, I will take it as digging into it deep and trying to find where we can make a compromise. So thank you very much, everyone. Any questions of the chair? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll see you all next Thursday.
Good luck on your election.
I'm not going to win. I don't want to win.
Oh,
But thank you.
I'm on the ballot myself by accident. Long story.
That any motion made